Hello and welcome to Epiphytic Cacti. Today we're going to take a look at a species. This would be Lepismium Houlletianum, form Regnellii. This species is endemic to Argentina and Brazil. It is epiphytic, and the IUNC redlist.org site lists it as least concern. So there are two forms of Lepismium Houlletianum. Regnellii is the form that we see the most often. The difference is really in the base of the flowers. So the base of the flowers on the standard form is red. The base of the flowers on this form, not so much. Started this guy from cutting, and I've had it for about 2 years. One of the things that I like to do is I like to keep some of my plants in like real small, tight pots like that because I have a lot of plants, so I try to keep them sort of contained. This plant is really kind of at a stage where it needs to be repotted. I do believe that I probably started this plant from a handful of cuttings, maybe like 3 cuttings or something. It is generally a very fast growing plant, and it is a higher light plant. Lepismium in general is something that I've noticed in the genus that most of them are much higher light plants. So whereas some of your Rhipsalis, and I think a lot of times these guys all get bundled into the genus Rhipsalis, even though they're not in the same genus. But like the genus Rhipsalis, they appreciate higher light, but they generally are kept in kind of lower light environments. Whereas this one will definitely struggle and will not appreciate being in a lower light environment. This has bloomed. I think that this is the 3rd time that this plant has bloomed, but the first time that it bloomed, it was when I moved it in the fall here, and it just threw out, I think it was like 3 blooms. And then a little bit later in the winter, it threw out a few more blooms. And then I moved it outside in the springtime and put it in a pretty bright area after acclimatizing it, of course. And then it decided it was going to actually bloom. I do believe that this is a plant that can bloom really sporadically throughout the year. And much to my surprise, these flowers are highly fragrant. I'm not really sure what it smells like. It's a sweet kind of strong smell though. Very, very floral smell. So that's kind of interesting. I was not expecting that, nor had I ever read or heard anywhere that this plant was fragrant. So I think that's one reason to go out and get it, outside of the fact that, I mean, it's just absolutely beautiful. It's a very fast grower. If you put it in a little bit higher light, it can get red margins on the edges of its branches. These branches, they can get very, very long. Things in my area are a little bit weird, and if I don't keep them, if I move them outside and then move them back in, and I don't actually keep them under grow lights and stuff like that, they'll kind of etiolate. So here you see this big, long, kind of crazy branch. It's one of the reasons that I know that this is a highlight plant, is just the sheer fact that it grew these growing indoors through the winter in a south-facing window. So this kind of thing is very indicative to me of this plant was not getting enough light indoors where I had it. And I can, honestly, you can get away with the idea of like growing them indoors and, then cutting these off, and when you move them outside and stuff, and everything will be just fine. You can also leave them. I mean, they don't really serve that much purpose, but I mean, whatever floats your boat there, because here you can see that it's starting to get wider, and that's pretty much what will happen. These long kind of shoots that grew all etiolated indoors, like now they'll just continue to grow out of the ends and get longer. And it depends on whether or not you find that attractive. And if you do see that, I mean, because there are so many signs here of this plant trying to find more light. So because it grew these shoots out, and because these shoots are covered in these aerial roots, what this plant was trying to do is that it was not in a place where it was getting enough light, so it was trying to grow these out to find something and attach itself. And it's really interesting because if you watch time-lapse videos of some plants like peas, it's very interesting because to the human eye, this happens so slow that we often don't really notice our plants moving around like that. But this likely would have been kind of, going around like this, trying to find something to latch onto. It just happens so slowly that we don't see it. In all honesty, on time-lapse, I do find it a little bit creepy. But I mean, I find it very cool, but it's also a little bit creepy. Based off of the amount of flowers that it's producing, it is also very floriferous. So it is a very good grower. in proper light conditions. It's very floriferous in proper light conditions. If I move this guy into a bigger pot, it will definitely just grow bigger. It is highly, highly elegant because it just grows super pendant in these beautiful long branches. So here, if I pick this up, you can see how beautiful it just hangs down and then just produces, I mean, just tons of these little beautiful white flowers. I mean, look at the amount of flowers. You know, in some places, almost every aerial has produced a flower here. And it just really, I mean, that fragrance, it was so shocking when I was like, you know, because whenever you see the flowers, you immediately try to stick your nose in it and smell it. And I was just so taken aback. Here's really beautiful. There you go. Really, really beautiful. And the flowers, you know, they don't really open super wide. They're slightly variable of size, but they're all in the same general size area. Mostly there's just a single bloom out of each aerial, but I'm noticing that every once in a while there's two. There's little twins there. So that's pretty interesting, but I think that might be the only twin. I don't think that there's any other aerials here where it's producing more than one there. And, you know, here, if we come real up close, you can see that inside of the throat there is a very, 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 very small sort of little ring of color that's in there, but it is not real prominent. It is the slightest little dot of, I guess, kind of a reddish that's in there. That's about as wide as they might open. Generally, they don't even open that wide. You can see sort of the base. I think the base, the ovary on these flowers is really interesting. It's not really round. It's kind of a little bit of a different ovary there from most epiphytic cacti that I've seen. But that is kind of what makes, I think, the Lepismium really unique. And you can see some of the flowers are a little bit more colorful in terms of like the outer part being cream than the other ones. And it can get a little tiny bit, let's see if I can find, there's a great big flower right here for some reason. This flower is much larger than the rest of the flowers and is also more colorful. So you can see the colors there that are going on the outside of the flower, the outer petals. It's kind of a rosy cream color. Actually, it's kind of a rose gold color, really. So it's a little bit of a rose gold color on those major outer petals, but I do see little tints of green on the outer petals too, or I guess on the back side of the innermost petals. This is very interesting. Right in the light there. There we go. Yeah, so really just a gorgeous plant. And definitely one of my favorites. Definitely one of my favorites. And I will say that if you ever do see the standard form of this, where the base of the flower is red, it is one that is highly uncommon. This plant particularly, like, I wouldn't say that this is the most uncommon plant. This one really is one of the easiest to find in the United States. I do see it quite often on like eBay and Etsy and stuff like that. I do see cuttings of it quite often. So it's definitely really interesting to watch grow and really fun to watch bloom. And it's just a fun, elegant, beautiful plant overall. I hope that you've enjoyed taking a look at Lepismium Houlletianum form Regnellii with me. Thank you for watching and happy cacti growing.